detector. Okay, more specifically, it's a direct detector with counting capacity. So, if I'm going to have a microscope and I need to get high resolution data, I would prefer his microscope than your microscope, just for the detector. Okay, the CCD camera cannot give me as much signal output from my, I guess my input. Okay, so if my inputs I can see you very clearly on a CCD camera, when I get the image up, I'm not going to see it just as good. That's what I mean by having a better camera. The degree is higher. Okay, I will explain what that is. Now, anything else? Yours camera, your microscope, what would be the high tension?
I don't know.
It says in your name.
Oh, the one detector.
What's the name? The name of the microscope?
Here.
Okay, that didn't say anything. That's usually a 120 kV. Okay, that's the high tension value of that. Now, how about the one that you were about to get?
300.
Okay, 300 kV. How about yours?
I used Electron Microscopes.
Okay, so that's a 200 kV. Now, there's one thing that you should understand is that each microscope that you look at, they can all do multiple high tension. So the value that we just quote is the highest value that it will take. Okay, you can do it at the lower value as well, but a lot of the time what it's going to require is a new alignment to make everything to be perfect for it. Okay, so that's the differences between it. And let me see, what else did I ask? I think it's high tension.
I mentioned
The down.
and the camera, and then what else? Source. That's it.
That's it. That's all I'm asking. Now, last question. You have effect. Now, you also realize that you got effect. Same with F20. It also has effect. What kind of effect do you have? I'm going to actually talk about the two different kinds of effects. There's a warm effect, there's a cold effect. Which one do you have? No idea? Okay. So, the ones that you have are the warm effect. Okay? Do you have there's a voltage applied to it, and it's basically try to draw the electron out a little bit. The cold effect. Now, which one is supposed to be better? What's the best source that's available that he ever talked about? The best one is actually the cold effect. It has the best So the thing is that the reason that it's not being used in the cold effect, there are several reasons actually. One is that it's more expensive. Okay, it's a technology that's more expensive. The second one is that it's the intensity that give out is not as consistent. Will decay pretty quickly. And then what you have to do is what they call flashing. It's basically has to bring that up again so that it got enough electrons to fall over the slope to give you the electrons, give you the beam. So as a result, it's not as good for you to want to collect data for several days, in which you. Why is a pattern field so much more expensive than F20?
Because now, I think, are we streaming live? We have been for the past.
It's like on and off. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, because we have one person remote. Okay, I was gonna assume that we're beginning the lecture, and I'll say, good afternoon, and welcome to the Science of Electron Microscopy Center's WinterEM course. Today we have Angie Chang, a senior. Tell us about a nanometer microscope. And I think the fortune that we have with Angie is that she is our lead. It's very hard to upgrade hardware unless you're in the factory or you buy the next generation. But how can you extend existing equipment with software implementation and making the user experience even better and more robust, and especially with automation, where you might be a very good microscopist, but are you going to be a good microscopist 72 hours in straight? That's a little bit hard. And so where we might, and automation and programs can take root. So here's Angie Chang. And you're right. Are we actually streaming?
All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm responsible for giving you, whatever is called a lecture here. But the reality is that I'm expecting you to actually watch Gwen Jensen's video on the subject. And I'm not going to repeat anything that's in there. Okay? So if you get lost from the very beginning, then you will be lost if you haven't watched it yet. The reason that I'm doing this is to force you to look at that, because that thing is very, very good. And then you can watch it at 2 times speed, and then you can re-watch it if you have a part that you don't understand. That's the really good thing about it. And then from my point of view, then I can just supplement of the things that's not covered and the things that's more up to date. And even since the last time that I taught this particular subject, there were updates on that. So I have to change my slides. There are things that you didn't cover at that time, now it's being covered. So that's the whole reason of asking you to do it first. Now, before we were streaming live, I already asked a few of you that what do you find out about your facility? What kind of microscope that you found out that it has or it's going to have, and what kind of gun that it has, what kind of filament, what kind of source it has, what's the high tension, what kind of camera it has. Then you can compare what everyone's have access to as a starting point, and then to see, then we can compare what's the features in there and the common pearl of each one. Okay, so that's not a decision that you have to make as a student or even a postdoc. You just take what you have, but then at the same time, it's something that you need to learn to know that you don't always need to use the best microscope for everything. That's an important thing to do, to know as well. Now, you came in a little late, so I'm going to ask you the same question. So what did you find out what microscope you have at your facility? Is there anything else? Okay, so do you know? Okay, not about using it. Did you find out, say, for example, what kind of electron source it is using? Is it a tungsten, a lab 6, a warm FAG, a cold FAG? So no idea. So you didn't find out anything more than just what's the make. Okay, so I hope that you guys spend some time to actually see what's there, because it's not necessary that just the Cryo that's going to be concern you if you got to the high-end scope. There will be other scopes that you will be using along the way, and it's good to know that what's the limitation of each one and what you can do without having to spend a lot of money or time on something that is very hard to get on. Okay, so one of the things that we are covering for this has a lot to do with the microscope, the lens and all those things. in Grant's lectures, he explained a lot about what a lens is, an optical lens, what an optical lens is, and what a lens that's used in electron microscope, and how they are different. Okay, so one of the things is that in optical lens, if it's made from a glass, then it's itself is one entity. For the electron microscope, you actually have a lens system that will have several parts on it. Can anyone tell me what are those different parts? Anybody?
The electromagnetic coil.
Okay.
There's something to cool it down, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's very good. Okay. Now, then the first thing you to actually go to look at that lectures. There are 4 things that's in there. There's always their diffractor, okay, because the source doesn't always come in straight. There's the lens part, and then the lens will be, with coils, so that to do the magnetic field to focus those electrons. And then you'll have a stickmeter. Okay, the stickmeter underneath that is required because you can never make a perfect lens. And in fact, usually it's far from perfect. Now, each of the microscope that you've seen, lower end and high end, will all have all these parts. Okay, and then the last component on that is an aperture. The purpose of the aperture is to make sure that the ones that's not so perfect, after you did whatever you can still take whatever in the middle, which represents the best that you can get out of this whole system to pass to the next part. Okay, so with an a glass lens, your lens can be made so much better on the lens part. You can still make all those different parts with diffractor and all those things. But of course, with the glass lens, oftentimes you just adjust the lens itself, because to diffract the light, then you need a mirror and things like that to do your diffracting part, right? To get your source straight. Now the other way to do it is just move the lens. On the electron microscope, I can't move the lens. That's why I have a diffractor to move my source. So you do one thing or the other to get the light right. Now the stickmeter part, in general, there isn't such a thing for any optical microscope. And then it will also have aperture, because the lens, no matter how you do it, the edge is still not going to be as good. So you may be using an aperture to make it, give you better contrast or whatever. So this is what I'm giving you, but because you register and started to give me some answer. You really don't deserve it, but okay. But this is called a full scope. This is made by a Stanford professor who made this so that the idea is that he wants every child in the world can have a microscope in their hand. So this is cost $1 to make. And so we got quite a few here, because the last time that we had some event here, and the President Clinton requested about a bunch of those for high school teachers. And it actually made a pretty interesting microscope. So I have one that says I made this one myself. And I have a specimen in here. If you look from this side, you're going to see what's in there. So you can pass this around and take a look. So in this, the main component in there is an objective lens. Okay, so they made out of a plastic to have that lens in there. And then there are all sorts of things that's related to exactly what you learned in your lecture, with aperture and stuff like that. There are things that you need to use to get your focus better. And once we started to learn the Fourier transformation and the image formation, you're going to see things in there. This is what I found very interesting about, because I saw in there a phase contrast and what happened when I defocus, how my face actually, gets reversed. It was very interesting to see what we consider as a good image in a optical world and what we see on an electron microscope. So those are all pretty valuable things to learn from it. Okay, now to my part here. Now one of the things that we found out by surveying you guys as the microscopes that you see. So you have low-end scope, which you probably saw it's more like this. It's open in a room, right? That you can sit in front of it and operate in everything. So this is typically the lower-end microscope. It doesn't have any kind of shield around it. It doesn't go inside the box. Okay, and that's because everybody do it right in front of it. Okay, this kind of microscope are actually best for investigating the different components because you can see them right away. So this little model here that has a place to put the specimen holder, put the specimen in. So any part on top of that, that will be, if you have a lens there, you're going to, if there are aperture there, those are for the condenser system. Anything below that will be for your objective and then your projection. So the intermediate, the objective is forming an image. The projection part, the intermediate lens and the projection lens systems is giving you the magnification. Okay, so you can just imagine you have a light on there, make sure that it's get to the sample, and then from on, you're going to make a good image. Then you watch it on a detector or binoculars. Okay, now a lot of the microscopes that you're going to see now that when you go to your facility or when you use here, it's going to start not looking like this. Now the reason for that is stability. Okay, you get better stability by enclose this whole inside something. Okay, so you can have doors that close it up into a box. And you're going to see the microscope at the 200 kV level. Most of the ones that you see at the 200 kV level, they have a box. But if you ever had a chance, you open that box, you look at that. It looks very simple. It's not very thick at all. It's probably just a simple steel thing in there. But if you look at something that's a Cryo, that box looks different. So here's the example. This picture was taken when we were installing our Titan Cryos. Okay, the box, the enclosure on here, has all sorts of things to make sure that it don't get the interference from the outside, won't get it in as easily. That makes the system more stable, and that also makes it more expensive. Okay, now the price differences between something like this and then another microscope at 200 kV with a film with a bad box is that you get the stability. The lens in here is also a little different. But the lens that they are using here, it's going to allow you to make better correction. The lens is not perfect, as I said. The magnetic lens especially, they are not perfect. So with a better designed lens, it makes it possible to get better image film. So these are all the things that make it more expensive. But then at the same time, it means that you need to take care of it better. So there are a lot more things that's included into that. Okay? So, what are we will add? Different TEM. I want talk a little bit about scope alignment. If you ever get a chance to align a scope, what you should do, what you should not do. The direct detection camera, I want to add a little bit of that because for your, once you start to collect data to get a high resolution information, you're going to start using all this. And then I want to talk a little bit of SEM because apparently we have one here as well. And it definitely is different. So there are some interesting parts of that. Now that will be good as far as different things. Okay, so we already got through this, right? We have a spirit. The Tegonite T12 is spirit. Okay, it's different names. I don't even know why they call it differently. If you are getting ones from the geo company, they have a geo, they're 1230. We have one here. Okay, that's also at 120 kV. It's usually used at 80 to 120 kilovolts. These microscopes tend to be the, without box type. Okay, they are simpler. Their source tend to be just tungsten or lab 6. There are people thinking about wanting to perfect on that too. There are reasons for that. We will go into that. The good thing about this is they are high contrast because of their voltage, and they are usually very more robust. Okay, the more features you want in a car, the harder it is to fix. So that's the idea why it works. The second one is the 200 kV ones, which we have the F20. You have a glacials. You may have a Geo 2100F. That F stands for FEG. Okay, so this category use FEG. Okay, the field emission gun. In 2016, when I last gave this lecture, the resolution that you can get from those is about 4 angstrom reliability. Does anyone know what's the record on that now for Cryo-EM for 200 kV? You were about to say something. Okay, I think it's sub 2, isn't it? We have there's a report, somebody tweeted about it, so they are now getting sub 2. So that's pretty remarkable. Okay, so this microscope, they don't have quite as good an optics. As I said, the lens, you can make it better by giving it more power to make different kind of changes to it. And it's not quite as good as the one that they put in on the highest end microscope. The next one is a 300 kV. Traditionally, that we consider that this is the best scope for the single particle or tomography Cryo-EM study. The reason is that it can penetrate better. A lot of the lens separation affects your resolution best at a higher voltage. There are problems as well. It's of course making something at a higher voltage is harder to do. That makes them more expensive in general. So your room is going to need to be bigger because need the what's that called?
Clearance, higher clearance.
The stack. The
Accelerator stack.
Yeah, the accelerator stack. You're going to need more. So it's bigger. Okay, you get all those things working out right for the voltage that you are working at. So all those things makes them in general more expensive. And now to top that, now they add all this insulation to make it more stable on the Krios, and then the cryo arm is the same thing for the geo. We are going to do that for the 300 kV. So that's kind of nice. In 2016, now we'll say, oh, I can get 2.5 to 3 angstrom resolution on those. Nowadays, it's also under 2, and it's closer to 1.5, rather than just under 2 for the 200 kV right now. So these are all the things that becomes more and more possible. Now you have to realize that the microscope itself, your optics, if you take in something that's not radiation sensitive, you can blast it out. You can get the resolution on this tube scope to be. You can get the information that's below 1 angstrom. Okay, but we can't do that with the cryo specimen yet. So it's not that they didn't build it to be able to do something like that. It's just the signal is so weak by then that we can't really use it. Okay? So those are the TEM we are using. Now the components. Any idea what we are looking at here? Okay, so this is a lens. Okay, this is a particular. This is I found this on the Wikipedia, and what do they say that what this is some of an early version of spherical CS, spherical aberration constant, or image aberration. Actually, the word that I use is the image aberration corrector. Okay, so whenever they say I have some kind of aberration corrector, that would be basically the stigmator part. Okay, you can think about it as the stigmator part. I'm taking what I get from my lens, I want to make it more perfect. Because when I get out from the lens, it's not going to be really good, because my lens is not that perfect. So what I can do is push and pull in all the different directions to make it perfect. It's possible to do that. To do that, you need a lot of pieces. Each one do its own job in different directions. This is why this type of thing will end up with what they call six hexapole arrangement. So normally our lens and the stigmator part on the quills for the Titan is a hexapole. Okay, so you basically, if you look at that, there will be half of this number, and each one will be bigger. That allows you to do the two-fold stigmation and also three-fold stigmation correction. And if you look at something like an F20 or G2100, they will have quadruple. So they can only do two-fold corrections. They cannot do three-fold correction. So-called three-fold correction basically in 3 different directions to make that correction. And that makes it slightly worse when you want to go to really high resolution. So those are all the things that they make differences in the different microscope. So this is what it looks like in that. And the next feature, the next thing that I found out also from internet is the different gum. That remember I was saying that you may have a heated tungsten, you have elastics, you have warm fat, you have a cold fat. Here they have a table showing what's the energy distribution. Okay, so an electron source or any light source, if you wanted to give you the best picture, that light source itself should be, have. So the larger this value is, that means the energy spread of the source that is coming out from there, it's going to have a spread of its energy. So as we go down, we'll have a better and better coherence in the wavelengths. Okay, so this is why this is supposed the co-fact is supposed to be the best one to use. But as I mentioned, this is not being used a lot in our field, and it might start to come on. Since now the resolution is getting higher and higher, we start have to worry about this spread. This is not used as much because this is more reliable, because it's more performant. With this, we probably will have to just do something about it every once in a while. You have to basically take that into account when you are doing your experiment. Okay? Now, the last thing on here, I'm going to give you the pointer. Here's where you put your catalyst forming your image. It got always has an aperture in there. It's so small, usually you can't even tell what it is. But there is an aperture. That's the objective aperture. Objective aperture is very, very close to your specimen in height. Okay? So that produces something over there. Okay? So it will be very close to your specimen, but in general it's right below. Okay? So, anyone, can you point it to me? Where will be the condenser system be? That's right. That's the part that's above. Okay, that's before. So that's also related to where the gun is. So where is the gun? At the very top, right? So the very top, where they show here, with the point that's representing your source. Okay, and then after all the stacks, then now you start having an aperture, right? Remember that I said that it will be always have some sort of aperture with some lens, so that there are tiny little lens in there. It is not always being shown here, but you have an aperture, you have another aperture, so your condenser system, you may have a series of that to give you the best result. So things like that. And then the last part over here will be your intermediate lens, your projection system, all those parts will be down here. Then at the very end is where you record the images. Okay? All right, alignment. What you should do, what you should not do. First thing, especially when you start with, you probably start off with something that's simple. Okay, and you will learn how to align it, or to just know how to learn how to tell that if it's or not. The thing that you want to know, if you are doing any alignment at all, is that your microscope is, in general, already being aligned with a reference point, okay, in order to do things easier. When they made the microscope, they made it to a certain point. And that point is what they call the eccentric height in the focus. The eccentric height means that when you take your stage, your specimen in there, if you tilt that specimen, then it's not going to move up and down at your optical axis. Okay? So basically, that means that your tilt axis is right on that axis, right? And relative to your objective lens, it's right at focus there. So what you would do at the very beginning is you would tilt that, make sure things doesn't move, and then you adjust your objective system to have it focus, the image focus right at that point. That's your reference point. That's where the factory did it. So if you are doing it yourself, you should make sure you are at that point before you start messing around with everything, before and after. So that's the first thing to do. The second thing is that learn how to check for it, rather than try to align it every time. Okay, that's very important. So what's anion? For condenser system, what's anion means your beam coming down straight through that system, get onto your get on the specimen. You can actually see it on your detector, right? So those are all the things that you will do on the condensing system. Okay, so you should be able to see it there if you have a high magnification. So one of the things that I would recommend you do is that go to the magnification you're going to use. Just take a look, even without the specimen, if possible, to see if the beam is there. If you have there, you're reasonably aligned. If it's not there, I say you can go to the lower mag to find out where it is. If it's still not there, go for help rather than try to do it yourself, because that means something is really wrong. Okay. Now the condensing system, there's something that you would look for. If you have a effect, okay, your beam is going to look something like this on the edge. So this is the edge of a beam, and you're going to see a lot of ripples here. Okay, that comes from this electron source being very coherent, and the fact that the condenser aperture is not at the same plane as where it focused. So you're going to see all those ripples here. If you have a well-aligned condensing system, when you look at this, you're going to see the ripples, the same number of ripples in each direction that you are looking at. Okay, so if you see that, you know your condensing system is pretty good. Then you don't have to do anything about it. In most cases, this is going to be true. Okay, this is why I say look first before you try to align, because you can cause more harm when you align it. The part of the reason is hysteresis, which Grant also mentioned. Okay, hysteresis is something that's always going to affect your result in your alignment. So that's important to do. The next thing I always say, I want people to check, to do, is that your alignment should go from the top to the bottom. It shouldn't be the other way around. Okay, you always make sure your condensing, make sure your gun is aligned, your condensing system aligned, then your objective system aligned, then your projection intermediate system is doing the right diffraction, so that when you go to different magnification, it's not going to move around. But always do the top first. Unless those are good, don't do anything at the bottom, because you'll be wasting your time and making things worse. Okay? What not to do? If you're going to start doing alignments at your facility, especially when someone is not there, now it's good to learn, but if you want to learn, you need to first learn how to undo it. Okay? Most new microscopes, you have a way of saving a condition. Get permission from your EM manager, say that you want to learn this. And if they say, okay, they think that you're somebody who's likely to become an expert, and then they will give you permission. But before you start it, make sure the alignment was saved. Whatever was there was saved. Usually the EM manager, they would have saved something that's really good. And you ask them, no, it's been saved, now you can play. This way, when you get it wrong, you can get back. Okay? Second thing is that don't align your microscope when it's not stable. In Grant Jensen's lecture, one of the more important things that he mentioned is that electromagnetic events are very sensitive to the environment. So if you are aligning it when the air condition is broken, it's not a good day to do it. Or that's, there's some thing that they need to do, open up that protecting box to do a lot of work on it. don't align it the right way. Those are the things that's very important to do. So we tend to, so for example, on our Cryos, I would recommend that, if there's a cool down, just give it overnight, let it sit there. Tomorrow, it's probably when you open it up, everything will be fine as it was before. That's better than trying to align it on the day that's just been fixed. Okay, that's alignment. Any question?
What about for a system where it's not cold all the time, like a T12 or an F20, where you cool it down in the morning? How long should you wait before you do alignment on a system like that?
On the system like that, when you say you cool it down in the morning,
Right.
you actually only cool down your specimen area. Your lens is still on the whole day.
Okay.
So that's stable.
Okay.
Okay. When I say stable now, I'm referring to the lens, not your specimen.
So if like water temperature to the lenses was off and the lenses were warmed up, then don't align.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what's important. It's not whether you are using cryo specimen today or you are using negative standard temperature. That's not the issue. Yeah. Because most of this is under vacuum. It's not going to, your lens is not going to know your sample is at the room temperature or cryo. Anything else? Okay. Now, I want to add a little bit of things about the digital cameras for TEM. Bernard actually, he mentioned that, there's the CCD and then there's direct detector. He mentioned this, just quickly say that all those direct detector are CMOS camera. Now, what's the differences between CMOS and the CCD really is the sensor, how they are processing the information. So I'm putting it here. So you have actually different things that you are talking about. There's, you convert it to photon or you directly sense it. And then your sensor could be the CCD, the charged coupled device, or the CMOS, it's complementary metal oxide semiconductor. You can do a combination of them. So the ones that the traditional CCD has a phosphor plate on top of this sensor, CCD sensor. The way they are doing is that each one of them get a charge, and then there's a separate device that take all of this streaming into somewhere else, and then output the information. It's a signal. The direct detector with direct sensing with CMOS, the direct sensing just means that it doesn't have that fiber optic plate on it. So it actually keeps directly the sensor. Okay, now, and then the CMOS and the CCD are different in a way that fundamentally the CMOS, each one of them has its own way of converting the electron directly to a digital signal. So each one of those can be one output. That makes it faster because you don't have to wait the whole row and then do things like that. As a result, when we're using a CMOS camera, they are always what they call a frame. You can get really high frame rate because each time you can get through everything that on the whole chip really fast. But on this, it's more limited. Okay, that's basically changed how we are doing things nowadays. Now, we can have another combination. Can have a CMOS chip, I can add some photon conversion to it. This type of camera is being used quite a lot. A lot of if you are buying a new camera, it may not be a CCD camera. It will be a CMOS camera, but it will have, even for the lower end, it's not direct detector, it's going to have a phosphor plate on it. The nice thing about this is that after all, if you put the electrons right on the sensor, it's going to start damaging. It's not damaging as fast as we were worried about it a few years ago, but it still does that. With a fiber optic plate on top of it, it's very unlikely that it will get damaged. So this can be used very robustly. You can do electron diffraction on it without worrying about changing its performance. So this type of camera is also very desirable today and very reliable. So these are the three types now. In terms of resolution that you are getting right now, this is the best. Part of the reason is because that the phosphor layer is a position where electron goes in and your light coming out will also spread out, other than just split onto the sensor itself. So those spread doesn't exist in this condition, makes it the better. Now, in terms of what other combination, there's only one combination left, which is direct sensing onto a CCD chip. That has been tried before, and it didn't work out very well. So no one really pursued that. You don't see a camera that's featured this particular combination. Okay. Now, how about the future? Now, we have all this, that's very nice. So what can we expect in the future? The next, that's the next slide. So I'm going to go through this one first. The way that we describe the detector performance, you will learn a bit of that after you know about Fourier transformation. But basically, there are two terms that they will talk about. Modulation transfer function, that just means that you have a signal comes in, how much? If I have one signal coming, do I get one out? Okay, we get 0.5 out, then it's 0.5 on this scale. And this plotted in a frequency space. So the higher frequency for the camera that we have, they tend to have less of the signal being transferred over. This is not just enough for us to describe the result. You have to consider how much noise that it has. That's when DQE comes in. DQE considers the noise in this situation. So you take what this is, and you take off the effect of the noise by dividing it by noise at each of the data points. Then you end up with something that describes your signal to noise ratio at each of the frequencies. So that's what this is. Okay. So basically, for each of the detectors, they were going to be talking about this. Now, which one is better? The best one would be the DQE be 1 all the time, no matter what frequency you are talking about. So get everything all the time. That would be the ideal situation. So there is a camera that's promising to do that. Okay. And it has been used for the X-ray field. Any of you are from a lab that's predominantly do X-ray crystallography? Okay. So if you have been to synchrotron, or heard people have been going to synchrotron, they may have used one of those. It's called the hybrid pixel array detector. Okay. And the idea of this is to say that right now, the reason that we are not getting the best signal to noise ratio for all the frequency is because when, say, electron or photon comes in and hit the sensor, when you create all sorts of things scattering out from the point where I'm at, right? So it's not always, I cannot capture that by itself. What this camera does is that it has an electric field at the sensor part. So when something comes in, it's basically concentrated back. It cannot spread out. It gets restricted into that area. Makes each of the pixel is not, you get in this pixel, it's not going to get to the pixel 0 and 2. It always gets where you are. So that makes it a perfect detector. And then it has the things, just like CMOS, will individually has all this capacity of transfer that into a real signal. So that makes this a really good detector. Now the problem why we are not using it. Then the other thing is that, for example, this is one of the detectors that's being featured in this particular paper that talks about electron diffraction on chemicals. And in that they take basically one of this hybrid pixel detector from Dexter's and then use it on that. This particular detector, for example, this model they call 1M as 1K by 1K detector. They're running at 300 hertz. It means that you get 3,000 frames of information in that. So you can run it really fast, and then at the same time they have really, really good performance. The problem for us is that because of all the electronics that's involved in here, they tend to make it at a really large pixel size. So currently, for this particular model, it's 75 micron per pixel. In comparison, the K2 is about 5.6 or 6 micron pixel. I think the Falcon 3 is 15 or something like that, right? 14 micron. Yeah, so it's a very different scale. Now, for us, it's a problem because the larger your detector is, it means that you have a bigger area you need to pump down in a vacuum. That makes it hard. So it hasn't been happening yet for us to be able to use this. But it might change, and that will be the next round of, I guess, jump, possibly. Okay, recommended readings. I have always liked to read the instrument manual. They are in PDF format now. You should be able to ask for, access to it, and then you can read them. They're pretty good. And I have a little book here that I use. I like it very much. It's simple. And go on internet. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm going to spend the last few minutes on the SEM. Okay? So, you have gone through the TEM. So everything that goes through your specimen, you go through your lens, and then you get to, enter the bottom. Everything goes straight. With SEM, the main part is that you have an electron, you have a lens, whatever, and a scanning coil, that would be the diffractor, you have things to move around to scan. And then you have your specimen, okay? Instead of going through, what it's trying to collect is what's come back from it. And then you scan through that. At each point, you can use a detector that's not positionally sensitive, because my beam and the paste that I'm probing is tiny. But I don't care where it goes. I just collect it all. So you can have a different kind of detector, have a backscatter electron detector. You can have a secondary electron detector, which detect electrons that's the energy is being altered by the specimen. So you can do all sorts of things to it, looking at things that will produce more of secondary electrons. That means that you have different elements in there. You can have all sorts of things that can be done on it. But as far as the configuration, it just means that now I come back, and there is no such a thing as projection system on here, because you don't actually do that. You're not really doing things in this different magnification. Okay. So one of the things is that because the way that this electron penetrates into whatever you're looking at, there are different behaviors of what do you get? Then you can detect it in different ways. So you have something that's actually you have a hill over here. If the electron is hitting somewhere on an edge, then you get more of the secondary electrons coming out from it. In comparison with something that's flat like this, then only very little escape from that surface. So you get things very beautifully like those, like the shadowing effect or eye of some insect. So that's the nice thing of SEM. You can also use, as I said, the secondary electrons represent the component, the elementary composition of the material that it hits. So you can tell whether you have silicon, titanium, in your picture by doing this. So that makes it unique in its behavior. If you use TEM, you won't see that unless your energy filter in those you do something else to it to look at like the secondary electrons. And that's it, actually. That's all I want to cover. I mean, there are a lot of concept track questions in grant lectures. Since you haven't, many of you haven't even looked at it, it's pointless for us to actually go through this. So please go through that because this is your first lecture and you're already behind. Okay? So that's it. Anything else you want to know at this point?
I have a lingering question about the alignment. When you're looking for the eccentric height, are you changing the height of the stage or the height of the objective?
Okay, you're doing two things. Okay, the first part when you are rocking it, when you are tilting it to make sure that it doesn't move around, to make your axis is right. That part you will be moving the stage to get to that height. The second part, when you say, I say you adjust your objective lens to focus to that point. That is changing the objective lens.
Okay, so when you change the defocus, you're changing the height of the objective.
You could do it both ways. Okay, since my objective lens is going to focus at one point at any time, right? So I could move my stage to there to get the focus, or I could move. If my stage is here, I could move objective lens there to focus. This is why you have to do first, get your stage right and do that, both of this, before you are mind. This way, so the point that you are focused on for your objective lens is the same point as when they created the microscope.
Gee, you have a question from YouTube.
Yeah.
So this is from Robbie. He's asking, is a CS corrector a combination of lenses which correct astigmatism?
Yes. Yeah, it's more than just astigmatism.
Right.
It's all the aberrations that they can be described. Some of them, many of them can be corrected by what's called a CS corrector or image corrector. So they are, I think, there are many terms. So you basically expand it out from perfect, then you can do an expansion of everything, and you have many terms on it. Just some of them are more important and some less. But each one of them will represent to some kind of aberration. Anything else?
Does anybody have any answers to the concept check questions?
Or anyone want to take a stab at them?
Yeah. You want to take a guess?
Electrons have smaller wavelengths.
That's good. Compared to photons. What are the disadvantages of using electrons compared to photons?
It's destructive.
It is destructive.
What about neutrons?
Neutrons are a pain to work with because there's only a few things that actually make neutrons. Like I think there's a reactor down on Oak Ridge that makes neutrons. They're also very hard to do things like focusing, I believe, because they don't have any charge, and so the lenses for them to suck.
There really aren't that many.
They're just much harder to work with. So like the monochromator for neutrons, I believe, is just sort of like a spinning filter, pretty much. So it basically just blocks out neutrons at different speed, physically as opposed to doing it in another sense. But I believe neutrons are. Neutrons can do a lot of interesting experiments with like programming the actual composition of certain of what the atoms actually are based on the scattering properties. I can't remember.
That was a good answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
They also have small wavelengths, which is good for imaging, but are much less destructive than electrons. So if we can figure out how to make a neutron microscope
Yeah.
with a nice source of neutrons that is coherent, doesn't take up a ton of space, it isn't massively expensive, and we can figure out how to focus them, it could be great. If you can deal with all of those problems.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Somebody probably thought the same thing about electrons at one point.
Yeah.
How the heck do you make a stable source of electrons? Light's easy, relatively speaking. Just give it some trouble. What about other structural biology techniques? You can't answer good. You're a structural biologist. So what other techniques get higher resolution than cryo-EM typically? X-ray crystallography is the classic one. There's one more that doesn't get as much love as I think it should.
Oh, don't bring that here.
So when you guys went on the tour, you guys saw it next door. It was the NMR.
Yeah.
So.
Just NMR fans.
It's like an asterisk next to that.
Most people don't. I mean, okay, this is a good question. What kinds of samples, what kind of questions can you address with NMR? You can't, well, maybe you can with cryo-EM, but especially X-ray crystallography. What does X-ray crystallography not answer that NMR can?
Folding and flexibility.
Yeah, dynamics. NMR can give you nice dynamic information. Cryo-EM is getting to the point where maybe it can do that as well.
Are there any other techniques besides the big three? Like
Depends. Depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you can do neutron crystallography. It's very esoteric. There are also small niche things in crystallography. So silver crystallography, they're doing something like serial femto.
X-File.
Yeah, XFEL. So they're using like a C-tron source, using a linear accelerator source. You get massive amounts of photons, and you have to basically just shoot a whole bunch of small microcrystals to shot from like a thing. Instead of shooting one crystal and turning it through the X-rays, you're just basically shooting a whole smattering of small microcrystals, samples, things from that. And if there's anything else.
There's electron diffraction, whether or not you
Yeah.
consider that a separate technique.
Yeah,
Kind of.
electron diffraction.
Small angle X-ray,
Yeah,
That's right.
time resolved X-ray.
Yeah. EPR, deer.
Who cares about those? This is about EM. What about the third question? What structural biology techniques complement cryo-EM at lower resolutions? Sure.
That would be more SACs. SACs is definitely.
Not the microscope.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Tomography
many,
was considered a low resolution, but it's actually hitting like you know, close to, not atomic resolution, but like in the 5-6 angstrom range, so.
Parallel to SACs is also SANS. You can use neutrons for your small and center.
Okay, so for any of these techniques, I think the second part of the question is interesting. What kind of questions and samples do they address? We can all go to the Wikipedia page for structural biology and read off the different techniques, but why use one over the other? We can pick all tomography. We do a lot of tomography here. Why would you do tomography over single particle benefit?
So a lot of these high resolution techniques look at like proteins, just the protein itself. But if we want to know how that protein's interacting at like, let's say the tissue level, you need something to like scale it back a bit. So that tells you more like interactome type questions. What else?
That's pretty good. There are a few papers out on some super resolution optical techniques where you're not getting necessarily the kind of structural information that we're used to getting, you know, Coulomb potentials or, you know, electron density maps or whatever, but people have been able to label individual subunits with fluorescent proteins and figure out oligomeric states and like very broad like structural questions about what subunits are interacting with what subunits. You might be able to make an argument and say that those are kind of structural techniques, as it does give you some semblance of structural information. Also something that you can do in more native cellular contexts, which is going to be an interesting field, particularly for tomography, electron tomography in the future.
Do you have any more concept check questions that you want to go over, Archie?
No, this just happened to be the last time.
Nice.
There are a bunch of them.
Oh, okay, nice.
You would could go through it. I think it's like 12 pages or whatever.
I don't think we have time for 12 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, so it just happened to be a first page.
Well, thank you, Angie. Just a reminder, next week's class on Monday is going to be in the SEMC conference room. So make sure when you come in, you sign in through the security desk and you go straight to the conference room. And next week will be sample prep and challenges in biological EM. So we'll be making convection ice cream. But make sure to see watch the lectures before the class. Again, you need to have that information before you come in. Thanks.
Youngzi and I are going to be running a couple of journal clubs and practical sessions. So one of the first practical actually is going to be aligning a microscope. So we're going to start with like FEG alignments, probably on the F20. So we'll do an alignment of the FEG and then we'll align the condenser system. That's usually about what we can get through the amount of time that we'll have. So if you're interested in doing journal club presentations, we're going to pick some articles that sort of correspond to where we're at in lectures. Somebody will present on them and then we'll talk about them. Or if you're interested in the practicals, there's the microscopy practical, which is basically alignments. There's a single particle practical and then some tomography practicals. If you're interested in those, let us know so that we can sort of gauge interest and figure out what kind of demand there or what kind of interest there is for the practical stuff, so we can figure out what rooms to book and what computational resources and stuff are going to be.
Highly recommended because this classroom size is small enough where you guys can get some hands-on time with some of the resources that we have here, which are pretty plentiful. So definitely sign up. I think we're done with the video camp.